A serial killer stalks a small southern town. Bodies are found raped and strangled with no suspect in sight. This was Gaffney in the winter of 1968 when Leroy Martin earned his nickname, the Gaffney Strangler. His murders and the ghosts that followed are coming up next under the Kudzu. Annie Lucille Dedmon and her husband Roger had spent the evening in bars in Gaffney. After an argument in front of witnesses, Annie loaded her drunken husband into their car and began to drive home to Spindale, North Carolina. Their argument continued until Annie stopped the car and got out. Roger passed out in the car and Annie began walking home. She was picked up by a red-top cab driven by Leroy Martin. Roger eventually woke up and drove home. Police were at the Dedmon house later that morning. Annie's body had been found off Jerusalem Road, an isolated highway in northern Union County, South Carolina. She had been raped and strangled. Protesting his innocence, Roger was sentenced to 18 years at the Union County chain gang camp for his wife's murder. Nancy Carol Parris, age 20, was raped and strangled to death, and her body was dumped near a bridge on Ford Road. She had been reported missing by her husband the day before. Nancy Christine Reinhardt, age 14, was also strangled and raped. Her body was left under a brush pile off Old Chain Gang Road. She had been a prisoner for 10 days prior to her murder. Bill Gibbons, editor of the Gaffney Ledger, received a phone call from a man who started the conversation with the following instruction. Take out 3 sheets of paper. I've got 3 stories for you. Write down what I tell you on each sheet. The caller then provided the names and locations of 3 bodies: Nancy Parris, Nancy Reinhardt, and Annie Dedmon, a murder long considered closed. Don't go by yourself, the caller told Gibbons. Take the sheriff. Gibbons immediately called Sheriff Julian Wright. Wright, Gibbons, and Deputy Billy Bridges rode out to the bridge on Ford Road and found Parris's body. Reinhardt was discovered at the location described by the caller. For days, Gaffney was on edge. No one knew who the killer was, when they would strike next, or where. But evidence began trickling in. A local man approached Lieutenant Dick McKinnon of SLED and told him that he had seen a black 1957 Chevrolet on the Ford Road bridge. The witness also reported seeing a man throw something off the bridge. Gaffney was now the center of the largest manhunt in South Carolina's history. National news organizations descended upon the town. CBS even sent a young reporter named Dan Rather to cover the story. I'm Brian Scott. Join me next week as more of the terror of the Gaffney Strangler continues right here under the Kudzu.